Jiraiya, also lovingly known by his friends as Pervy Sage, and respected by his enemies as one of the three Sannin, that is to say legendary ninja, was a wise and intelligent teacher who might have had his vices, but was loved by everyone, and whose stories everyone liked to read, and not just because they were, well, maybe for exactly that reason. And was even respected by the likes of Kakashi Hatake, one of his biggest fans, even to the point where Sai, who was reading it on recommendation to learn to feel emotion. Jiraiya touched the lives of everyone who knew him, even down to the viewer. If Master Roshi and old Ben Kenobi could fuse into one person, they would name that fusion Jiraiya, the perfect mixture of comedy relief and wise sage. So we all felt it when he had his moment in the sun during his fight with Pain and bit the bullet. Naruto cried over a popsicle, as we all did. A true Shinobi treasure was lost to us forever, but for today, let's bring this treasure back into our lives and attempt to see what might have happened if he had lived through his fight with Pain. Welcome to the Amagi. Before we begin, we publish a new video every day, so be sure to subscribe to our channel and ring the bell to get notified about our latest videos. The Amagi's reach stretches beyond just this channel, so if you're a fan of us, please consider subscribing to our other channels and following us on all of our social media. Help us reach our goal of passing 100,000 followers on all of our accounts by the end of the year. Jiraiya, as soon as he came out of the academy, was placed on a team alongside Tsunade and Orochimaru under the guidance of Hiruzen Sarutobi, the third Hokage. Upon joining Team Hiruzen, they'd be given a very familiar bell test, during which Jiraiya continuously fell prey to Hiruzen. All of these failures and his inability to get one of the bells led him to being tied to a stump. Does any of this sound familiar? Seems Pervy Sage and his gutsy student weren't far different from each other. We're also shown in the movie Will of Fire that they were friends with a young boy named Hiroko, who was born with no special abilities and instead used the Chimera technique to steal the Kekkei Genkai of other shinobi to become strong, something that would later inspire Orochimaru. Hiroko was one of the Sannin's greatest friends, but upon finding out about his experiments, decided to turn him in. He would later go on to become a missing nin and the main antagonist of the movie, but the canon of this movie is questionable like all Naruto movies save for the last movie and possibly the Boruto movie, due to the Boruto movie being readapted through manga and anime with a few changes here and there. But just because a movie isn't canon doesn't mean that it's not awesome. I still prefer the Dragon Ball Z version of Broly over the new Super version. Hiruzen told Jiraiya during the bell test that he should attempt to be more like Orochimaru. However, Jiraiya countered that his transparent escape technique was proof that he was better, because he could spy on women while they were bathing. Perverted techniques, like master, like student. Naruto's technique was more on the nose, however, as he actually turned into a naked woman, as opposed to merely using the technique to spy on them. Hiruzen would offer to accompany him to see if it was true. Jiraiya always had a little bit of a thing for Tsunade even when they were younger. They would often fight in parallel to Naruto and Sakura. However, Jiraiya would eventually find a severe attraction to her when Tsunade's breasts filled out, which he would often attempt to peep on her just to see. A personal apology to all of our viewers, Pervy Sage is just so pervy. I swear, we're not that kind of channel. At some point in time during his early years, he would discover Mount Myoboku and the Toad Sages that called it home. He did so when he attempted to summon a toad without having a contract with one, which brought him back to the mountain. Eventually, he was trained by Fukusaku in their ways and would attain Sage Mode. Despite his training, it was imperfect, which caused his form to become more amphibian. He would not only get the pigmentation around the eyes alongside the toad-shaped eyes, his nose would also grow warts and he would end up on all fours and gain webbing between his toes and fingers. This wasn't all a downfall, however, and made him pretty dangerous, especially when teamed up with Fukusaku and Shima. Despite his form being indicative of imbalance between his energies and those of nature, it didn't make him any less of a warrior, and when teamed up with the aforementioned toads, he could remain in Sage Mode for a long period of time due to their constant taking in of natural energy. He could also use various other powerful techniques with these toads' help. Jiraiya was given a prophecy by the great toad sage who told him that sometime in his future he would end up the mentor of the child who would save the world. The way Jiraiya taught him would decide if the world survived, or if the Child of Prophecy would destroy the world, but, you know, no pressure. Not much is known about Jiraiya's past beyond this point, except that he eventually made Jonin and was a mentor to his own team, of which Minato belonged. Jiraiya began to suspect that this child would become the child of prophecy. After all, Minato was a freaking genius of a genin, and Minato would later teach Jiraiya a new trick, the Rasengan. Further still, Minato would go on to become the 4th Hokage, but no, this was not the child of prophecy. At around this time, Jiraiya also began working on a career in authoring books. His first book he ever authored was Gutsy Shinobi. The main character of the book was a boy named Naruto, who sought to end the endless cycle of war in the shinobi world. Jiraiya came up with the name while eating ramen one day, and due to this attempted to dissuade Minato from naming his unborn child after the main character, but was nonetheless honored by it. This book he wrote during his time training the Ame orphans, of which one of them, Nagato, he dedicated the book to due to the goals of Naruto in the book being inspired by Nagato's own beliefs. Speaking of Nagato, this begins the next part of Jiraiya's history. Despite having been disbanded earlier, Team Hiruzen reunites once more during the Second Shinobi World War. What they all did during this war is unknown save for their actions taken in Amagakure. We do, however, know that Team Hiruzen, among other shinobi, fought against Hanzo of the Salamander in the village hidden in the rain. However, everyone but Team Hiruzen died. This caused Hanzo to name Team Hiruzen the legendary Sannin. Jiraiya later was approached by 3 war orphans whose parents had died in the war. Guilt-ridden, Jiraiya decided to remain with them for a time to help them survive. Our Pervy Sage with a heart of gold. Orochimaru just wanted to kill them, our Snaky Sage with a heart of mold. Jiraiya stayed behind in Ame to help these kids, where he said he was teaching them to be shinobi, but was really just teaching them practical survival skills. But then again, if you're of the mind of the boss from Metal Gear Solid 3, you would realize that what makes a soldier, or in this case a ninja, is not something you can just teach someone. It's the heart of the person you're teaching that makes them a soldier, or, in this case, a shinobi. Nagato and his friends are later attacked by a shinobi, which Nagato kills using his Rinnegan. This disturbs Nagato, but Jiraiya comforts him by telling him that he did what was right in protecting his friends, and that he'd begin teaching them how to fight so they could defend themselves, believing that Nagato was the child of prophecy who would save the world. Jiraiya would continue to train them and help them learn how to survive. Eventually, he felt they were strong enough to go out on their own, and he left for Konoha, leaving behind a copy of The Tale of the Utterly Gutsy Ninja for them, dedicated to Nagato. Sadly, he heard that they had all died. Happily, they hadn't. Sadly, they later killed him, so boo to that. Eventually, after Hiruzen stepped down from his position of Hokage, he initially wished that Jiraiya would take it up and become the 4th Hokage. However, Jiraiya never did, and instead recommended that Minato become the 4th, who did. Jiraiya ended up the godfather of Naruto under the insistence of Kushina and Minato, and accepted. Sadly, Minato gave his life to seal the Nine Tails into his son, and wrote the key to the seal on the stomach of Gerutora, and sent him to Jiraiya, who assumed that it was the one Minato had chosen to help Naruto master the power. Come to think of it, I wonder what would have happened if Jiraiya had adopted Naruto from the start. Maybe we'll follow that line of thought in the future sometime. After this, Orochimaru fled the village after becoming a wanted criminal for his inhumane experimentation on innocent people. Jiraiya attempted to convince Orochimaru to return, but Orochimaru refused, attacked him, and fled. For years, Jiraiya tried to figure out what it was that caused Orochimaru to leave and came up with nothing. From that point on, Jiraiya continued to investigate Orochimaru as well as the Akatsuki, an organization which Orochimaru sought protection by joining. These investigations are what kept Jiraiya from becoming the 5th Hokage. This meant Hiruzen was coming out of retirement and staying that way. The next time we see Jiraiya is during the Chunin exams arc, when he's researching the female anatomy by observing the bathhouse. It's here that Ebisu, the personal teacher for Konohamaru who was also teaching Naruto, found Jiraiya and attempted to stop him, but ended up getting knocked unconscious. Naruto, now without a teacher, asks Jiraiya to teach him. Jiraiya refuses until Naruto shows off his sexy jutsu, which causes Jiraiya to change his mind. While watching Naruto struggle to learn, Jiraiya notices 2 things. Number 1, Naruto is the Jinchuriki, and numero 2, Naruto's chakra is being restricted by the 5-element seal which Orochimaru placed on him. He offers to teach Naruto how to use his tailed beast properly, and Naruto accepts. He goes to tell Ebisu, who doesn't mind, but asks that Jiraiya go to the 3rd Hokage's residence to discuss Orochimaru and stop whatever plan he has cooking in the wings. Jiraiya doesn't though. He then notices that Naruto not only isn't using the Nine Tails energy, but is making horrible use of his own chakra, which is why he's only able to summon little tadpoles as opposed to bigger frogs like Gamabunta. To rectify this, he simulates a life or death situation by throwing Naruto off a cliff. Naruto summons Gamabunta after requisitioning some of Kurama's chakra and manages to survive the fall this way, though he's drained and ends up in the hospital from it. During the Konoha Crush, Jiraiya is facing off against Orochimaru's snakes, in which he uses summoning food cart destroyer technique to crush them. He rushes to aid the third Hokage, but by the time he arrives, he finds the third has been killed and Orochimaru has fled. Jiraiya does not attend the funeral, but this does not mean he doesn't lament it. Jiraiya instead visits the training grounds where he weeps over the memories of his beloved mentor. Eventually, the Konoha Council decides that a new Kage is needed, and so they send Jiraiya to find Tsunade, in which Naruto also goes. After leaving the village, they make a short stop in Shukuba town for rest, where a girl begins to flirt with Jiraiya. Jiraiya sends Naruto to their room so Jiraiya can spend more time with the lovely lady. However, he suddenly remembers that no girl ever flirts with him first, and this is a massive red flag, so he begins to recognize that the girl is under genjutsu, which means Naruto is likely in danger. He makes it back to find that Naruto is about to be captured by Itachi and Kisame, both of whom are Akatsuki members who seek the tailed beasts for some unknown reason at the time, but definitely a diabolical purpose. Sasuke shows up, but is immediately put down by big bro Itachi. After Itachi and Kisame are forced to retreat, Might Guy shows up and actually attacks Jiraiya, attempting to protect Naruto from him, but later recognizes Jiraiya and apologizes. He tells Jiraiya that he didn't recognize him because he wasn't looking due to an attempt to avoid Itachi's Sharingan. Guy takes Sasuke back with him and leaves under Jiraiya's orders. Jiraiya explains to Naruto why the Akatsuki are after him. Naruto decides it's better to get stronger to protect himself. Jiraiya then decides that now is the best time to teach Naruto the Rasengan, and that goes about as well as you would expect. Jiraiya and Naruto learn Tsunade's location and they meet with her. She's surprised to see Jiraiya, having just met with Orochimaru. She doesn't divulge why they met though. Jiraiya speaks to her about the offer for her to become the 5th Hokage, but she dismisses it as a job for fools, which Naruto takes heavy offense to. Naruto tries to fight her, but Jiraiya holds him back. However, Tsunade later agrees to the fight where she effortlessly one-shots him. She then berates Jiraiya for attempting to teach someone so untalented as Naruto the Rasengan, calling it cruel of Jiraiya to let him believe. However, Naruto claims he can and will complete the Rasengan, and Tsunade makes a bet with him. If he can manage to complete it in a week, she will gift him the first Hokage's necklace, which she claims is worth a lot of money. Later, they find that Tsunade has made a deal with Orochimaru to heal his arms in exchange for having her brother and lover back, though this is but a ruse, and she attempts to kill Orochimaru. Naruto and Jiraiya, along with Shizune, attempt to help her fight Kabuto and Orochimaru. Jiraiya faces Orochimaru and Naruto faces Kabuto. Naruto manages to complete his Rasengan, which Tsunade admits allows him to win the bet. Naruto uses this Rasengan to defeat Kabuto, and Orochimaru decides to kill Naruto as he's becoming an issue. However, Jiraiya and Tsunade team up with Gamabunta and Katsuyu and defeat Orochimaru along with his snake summon Manda. Orochimaru flees with Kabuto but warns them that he has other ways of healing his arms before leaving. Tsunade heals Jiraiya's wounds and then accepts the position of Hokage. They return to the village with Tsunade, who heals Kakashi and Sasuke, both of whom had fallen under a genjutsu from Itachi, the Tsukiyomi. Naruto goes about the village greeting everyone. Jiraiya watches from afar and witnesses Naruto's battle with Sasuke, which he's surprised that Naruto would use the Rasengan against a friend. Kakashi asks if it was wise to teach Naruto the Rasengan, to which Jiraiya asks if it was wise to teach Sasuke the Chidori. Ah, touché, Pervy Sage, touché. Sasuke eventually defects from Konoha and Naruto goes after him. However, Jiraiya stops Naruto and attempts to tell him that it'd be foolish to go after Sasuke, but Naruto claims he'd rather be a fool and does so anyway. After this, Jiraiya takes Naruto for training. 2.5 years later, Jiraiya returns with Naruto and entrusts him to Kakashi's care. He informs Tsunade that the Akatsuki are going to start moving again and that their targets will be Naruto and Gaara, the Kazekage, since both are Jinchuriki. He then leaves the village to investigate. He does return a time later to inform them that Gaara has been captured, which leads into the Kazekage rescue mission. After they rescue Gaara, despite having lost the tailed beast, Jiraiya returns to speak with Kakashi and Tsunade about Naruto's lack of control over the tailed beast inside of him. They all think it's best to put Yamato into the same team as Naruto since Yamato has access to Wood Release, which can be used to pacify the Ninetales. After the Tenchi Bridge recon mission, Jiraiya returns to tell Tsunade that Orochimaru has been killed, and he suspects that this is a sign that Sasuke is making a move against Itachi. They share this information with Naruto, and Naruto claims that they should try to capture Itachi first in hopes of getting to Sasuke. So an 8-man team is formed to find Itachi, and Jiraiya sees them off alongside Tsunade. While they're gone though, Tsunade and Jiraiya meet, and Jiraiya mentions that he believes he found where the Akatsuki are based. He believes they're currently behind a civil war in Amagakure, and he plans to investigate it. Tsunade offers to come too, but Jiraiya declines because, well, she's the Hokage and she can't just leave the village. And so he goes to infiltrate alone, where he would get confirmation of the Akatsuki's presence and then report back to Konoha. While there, he discovers that Pain is the current leader of Ame, and that he killed Hanzo, which sort of freaks Jiraiya out given his own experiences with Hanzo. He tells Gerutora to go to Naruto with the key to the seal should anything happen to him. It isn't long after, though, that Pain catches on to Jiraiya and attacks him personally. This is where we reach our divergence point. Normally, Jiraiya dies here, but what would have happened if he had not? What if Jiraiya had instead survived this and went back to tell Konoha about it? Well, let's see. For all intents and purposes, let's say that Jiraiya saw this getting bad, discovered Pain's identity as Nagato, and rushes back to Konoha before they can kill him. What happens next? Well, I would assume that Jiraiya would tell Tsunade about Pain as well as the Rinnegan. He would also inform them that there is a possible attack that'd be coming. Tsunade and the rest of the village would begin to fortify, and Jiraiya would send Naruto to learn Sage Mode as quickly as possible until he can gain the control required to make better use of his tailed beast states. Naruto does just that, but while he's gone, Pain attacks. I could see that Jiraiya would go out to fight him alongside many other shinobi, and much like Kakashi, he would likely die here. Yes, I know the title, just trust me. Naruto would return and everything would likely happen the same as it does in the original timeline, except due to being in the village when it was attacked, Jiraiya would be revived alongside the others. However, Tsunade is put into a coma and Danzo replaces her. At this point, everything still remains the same until after the 5 Kage summit and the start of the 4th Shinobi World War. Due to Jiraiya being alive, it seems that Kakashi would likely be passed up as 6th Hokage. This would mean that Jiraiya would be offered instead, and given the circumstances, he has no choice but to accept the position. He would lead the shinobi in the 4th Shinobi World War the same until they reach the final battle. It's here that I could see Jiraiya teaming up with Tsunade and the newly revived Orochimaru in the final battle. He'd be there to support Naruto, but more than likely not much in the series would change beyond these things. He would have likely made these same choices as Orochimaru. The only thing I could guess that he would do differently would be command that his addition to Hokage Rock faces towards the ladies' bathhouse. The sad thing about this is that not much changes after this because the point is Naruto had already grown so much, he just didn't need Pervy Sage any longer. Jiraiya wouldn't have really wanted the role of Hokage, so he would only hold it for so long until Naruto was ready, in which he would pass it down and retire, being in his 70s. The issue I have with this is whether or not Koji Kashin would exist. He was instrumental in the fight against Jigen and was possibly the one who caused the ultimate demise of Ishiki, though I'm certain that not much would have changed and it would have only slowed things down for a while. While I am glad that Jiraiya can survive in this what if, it doesn't really change that much. Running all the scenarios in my head, I just don't see anything changing much beyond what's already listed, but it certainly is nice to think about him surviving. So what do you think? What would have happened had Jiraiya survived? Did I miss anything? Perhaps something you think would happen instead? Leave a comment down below to tell us your ideas. Give us a like and a subscription if you haven't already, and ring the bell to be notified when new videos like this drop. Peace.